Beginning in the 1970s as a mail-order catalog, the Surfcaster has long been known as the source for hard-to-find surf fishing gear, and I've been personally shopping with them since the 1980s. They offer honest advice and the best recommendations regardless of your experience level, and will tailor their suggestions to what you actually need.
As you would expect from a business that's been serving the surfcasting community for 50 years, their prices are competitive and delivery is always quick and secure. They want you to have the best possible experience in the surf and have the knowledge and inventory to put the right gear in your hands to make that happen. So check out the Surfcaster at www.thesurfcaster.com, and if you're in the area, stop into their brand new brick and mortar store in Shelton, Connecticut. So, Shelly, I meant to tell you this the other day on the phone when we were talking. I really enjoyed the fisherman article you wrote, and the best part, I think personally, was that final panel with the old photo of you mentioning that you'd written an article about needlefish 40 years ago. And man, you had some awesome hair, huh?
Back then I did. I used to get, like an afro look to it, which was popular back in the day. Now I got to kind of have an overcomb.
The windblown look.
Yeah, that was, I guess I was in my upper 30s back then, I guess, or maybe 40 something. I got to think back, but it was a long time ago, and that was a tremendous needlefish bite. That particular photo was John Bichelle Sr. from Betty and Nick's Bait and Tackle, and the needlefish started in Ocean County. Not to go into a real long detail if you don't want, but it was never used widely anywhere else back in the day. And I moved from Belmar to Ocean County in 1969, and another tackle shop called Gina Nart's, they were telling this area that they were catching a lot of stripers. We went down there with a buddy of mine, went into the tackle shop, and the gentleman behind the counter goes, "They're catching them on needlefish." And I didn't even know what he was talking about. Back in the 60s, I used, Rebels and Hellcats, and then before the Bombers even came out, and Red Fins and stuff like that. He said needlefish. So he gave us two, went up to the beach, and we caught, a dozen schoolies, and I was hooked on them. And then when I moved to Ocean County in 1973, it was a top lure all along Island Beach. All the regulars used them. And then it branched out into Monmouth County and then into the New England states later on in like the 80s when Musso made them and some of the other companies. Gibbs was one of the first to copy the boom that we were using back in the day. But that's a little bit of the history of it. And I have a lot more that I could probably share.
That's cool. I was going to ask if those originals were boons, because that seems to be like the first ones, however they got up to the Northeast, came in as the boons needlefish, which were junk.
But everybody kind of copied them. And then, I'll talk about it probably later on. Hoagie from Hoagie Lures just came out with one last year, and I had tremendous success. So it's all based on the bait fish and everything. But that's where that photo was. And they were a mix of a lot of stripers and weakfish, which we don't even see anymore, unfortunately. Great lure when the sandals are around.
Yeah. So which edition of the Fisherman, or which month? Was that September or October?
The October one, the one that's
the October. All right. Yeah, so definitely check that out if listeners out there have not read it yet. That was a good one for sure.
Yeah, October 2025.
Yeah. It was interesting, doing the article, and I like giving a lot of the history where things, started and everything, and then hope people get some pointers out of it and make them a better fisherman.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. So, thanks for that. That wasn't actually going to be part of the episode, but that's great. Right. We're going to keep it for sure. So we've got Shelly Carris, aka Shelly. He is here again. He was one of the very first guests we had on the podcast. 0 episodes, 0 views, listens ago. Now we're over 300,000, and he's back again, and that's very exciting. Now we're going to be talking about sand beaches today, which we talked to Jimmy Fee about last year. But this is going to be an entirely different take, because even though Jimmy started in Jersey, he's a New England guy, and he sort of approaches it very differently. And as we move into the fall, because we know this episode's coming out in the fall, we know a lot of you are going to be transitioning even more to sand beaches, whether you're on the Cape or you're in Rhode Island or you're in Long Island or you're in New Jersey. A lot of us move out front as the fish continue to move by, as they migrate. So we thought this was a perfect opportunity to get one of the top Jersey anglers to talk about specifically focusing on the sand beaches and sort of his take. So that's why we've got Shelly here today. We're really excited. I'll kick it over to you, Toby.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I think that was the first time you and I really got a chance to sit down and talk, Shelly. Was that first interview. I knew of you for a long enough time, which was cool, and you hopped in, and we've had a lot of requests to have you back on. So yes. I'm psyched to have you back on here again for sure. It was you were definitely one of the dudes we wanted to have back in, and the sand beach is an interesting topic. Again, we've talked about it a few times, but it's the perspective that we can get from so many different people. It seems almost, I guess, my perception is the perspective you can get from so many different people on that same thing. Like not terribly as much on the rocky beach area. So this should definitely be interesting. But before we jump into the meat, we want to touch base with you, ask the question we've been kind of asking a lot of our guests, or trying to remember to, I should say, when we plan the episodes out correctly. You're a New Jersey guy, no secret there. How has your season been so far? Good, bad, compared to past years? What are you looking at so far this year?
Well, to be honest, I'm doing it 69 years, and I caught my first striped bass when I was 10, and it was a 28.5-pound striper. This season so far has been the best ever.
You're lying.
And if you believe that, I got some swampland in New Jersey to sell you.
Yes.
I wanted to see Toby's face, and I got a pretty good visual of that. No, well, honestly, challenging. Just to put it, in small words. Not a lot of fish this spring. It seems like the back bays were kind of okay. South of us, I'm kind of central New Jersey, but Atlantic City area did very well in April. We were hoping those fish were going to move up to our zone, kind of bypassed us. I don't know if it's global warming to a degree. The bait was around, and then it kind of disappeared. We didn't have those gigantic schools of bunker like we had 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, even 15 years ago. Seems like each year it gets a little worse. But, it's challenging. And, unfortunately, the young breed fishermen that's been fishing the last few years, catching big fish, took it for granted. They didn't know how we had to work for it back in the day. But I'm, anticipating hopefully we're going to have a good fall, But to answer your question, it was a struggle, and I think most people would tell you the same thing.
Have you, this actually just popped in my head, didn't even think to ask, how has been the weakfish bite? And the reason I ask this is because I actually caught, not a lot, 2 weakfish this year myself in the New England surf, which is more than I catch in 5 years combined, unfortunately, most years. But there's been a lot of weakfish in southern New England late summer. How has the New Jersey weakfish bite been this year?
Poor. Exceptionally poor. I didn't see one. And back in the day, and I keep using that phrase, but in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I would catch 200 and 300 a season on a fly rod, up to 11 pounds. This year, I heard of one caught. I saw the picture of it, but physically I didn't see any taken at all. And we're using, I do a lot of fluke fishing in the summer. In the spring, we're using bucktails and, soft baits, and you would catch them by accident. But this year, almost non-existent from what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's sad. And I'm hoping it's cyclical. With growing up, I think the first ones I started catching were in the late 60s, and it peaked in, I guess, in the 80s and 90s, and then they kind of disappear. The regulations were really bad on it. Back then, it was 14 fish at 14 inches, which was a bad regulation.
Yeah, you don't need that.
You don't need that. And now we're down to 1 at, I think, still 14 inches or 16 inches, but that's almost like a moratorium, that 1 fish, because they're almost not around. Yeah. And really, nobody's really trying to target them. You would only catch them by accident right now.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because in general, it's generally better on the weak fish, at least down in your area, on an average season of late. So
you generally have more.
Just, it's maybe, hopefully, the body of them just moved up here and they're doing a little better than we think. But
hopefully, it'll be a good spawns, because But they were also the netters, not to pick on a commercial fishery, but they're a vulnerable fish. And when they leave the back bays, they school up in these gigantic schools, and the netters just, wipe them out.
Yeah.
So that happened back then. I think that's another factor for the decline.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brutal. To switch gears just a little bit, thinking positively, is there anything you're really looking forward to this fall? Maybe something that happened last year, or maybe something you saw 15 years ago that you haven't seen since. Is there something this fall that you're like, man, I really hope this happens again, sort of thing?
Just the amount of bait fish that we had the past, let's say, I don't want to go back too far, but the last 3 seasons, tremendous amount of peanut bunker and adult bunker, and some occasions with sand eels. I'm always praying for sand eels, because sand eels changes the way you fish. Basically, you could prospect more. You don't even have to look for the bait. Let's say like the bunkers, following schools. So you could jump around and hit different locations, and hopefully you're going to score. So again, just hoping that we have a good supply of bait. Temperature gives in the right range, that 55 to 60 degree mark. No storms, and hopefully we get it into December.
Which we've actually, this season, we've had a remarkable lack of storms. Toby and I haven't had a chance to talk about this even offline, but we haven't talked about it on the podcast. But this season in particular, we basically had one, and we're recording this right now. There's some surf, but it's not really a storm per se.
Right.
And so we really only one, and it was back in August. So it's at the end of August.
It gave me my biggest fish of the season, but so maybe I want a little shake up. But
yeah, so hopefully you'll get that, because every day that goes by, hurricane chance goes down, and hopefully the nor'easters aren't that bad. Although I love them, but I'm gonna say that for you. You don't. We'll pray that you don't get any nor'easters, but I could use a couple up here. That's for sure. So
we like them. We like them too.
You do like them. Yeah, you do.
Oh. No, Northeast. Well, we'll get into that, I guess, a little later.
Yeah, sure.
But Northeast, important wind.
So, can I transition, Toby? Can I move us to the topic?
Yeah.
Okay. So to get us started, this is a big question that can be answered in a whole bunch of different ways. When you get started, when it comes to sand, fishing the sand beach, it's a wide open sand beach, what's something you think anglers tend to get wrong? Or what's a biggest piece of advice you could think of?
Generally, because I'm mobile, so most of my fishing is done through my 4-wheel drive. But I'm riding the beach, and there's a lot of walk-on fishermen. Let's say they're not prepared. Being unprepared is key. If I don't have my truck actually with me, I want a smorgasbord of lures. I want to be ready for all different conditions possibly, and bait fish that may be in the area. I want to have that. I don't want to be there with one lure per se, So that's one thing. And being observant. You got to be observant. New anglers, look for bird activity, discolorations in the water, which might be bait, and move around. A lot of times I see people cast over cast in the same spot for maybe a half hour without moving. And, I'll walk 100 yards one direction, 100 yards another direction, get in my truck, move a mile down the beach. And if you're not mobile, get back into your car or your vehicle and move up or down the coast a little bit, trying to find activity. I usually want to find the fish. It's always nice that the fish find you, but I'm the one that wants to find the fish. So that would be one of my, advices to anglers.
So you say you want to be prepared. This may seem like a silly question, but I want to know it. So if you don't have a truck and you're not able to drive the beach, let's say, but you still want to be prepared, do you suggest they, jam a 3-tube bag full of stuff? Or can they get away with a couple of tubes? Or should they be carrying a 4-tube? What do you mean by that? Is there a certain, number of plugs they should be? I'm not asking if, it's 22 plugs. Oh, it's 14 plugs. But, because a lot of anglers, I think, have been going down in plug bag size, I've noticed. So
I see that all the time now, but I'm old school. I want to be over prepared than under prepared. Right. I don't want to be down there and somebody's throwing, let's say, a spook, and I don't have one in my bag, or a popper of some sort, or a metal lip of something, or a metal even, or a soft bait. I want to have a whole smorgasbord. And my son always used to say, he goes, Dad, you're always over prepared, but it's better to be over prepared. I want to have leaders in my wallet, my leader wallet. I don't want to have to, fumble around trying to make a leader if I get broken off or a bluefish bites me off, per se. So being prepared is key. And I don't mind carrying a big plug bag. I'd rather do that than have one that's not filled with the right stuff.
Cool. Yeah.
What would when you're packing, let's call it the over prepared surf bag to hit the fall sand, like what are categories that you're making sure you're filled, like top water, metal, like what would be, you don't have to get the specific, has to be this plug with this, but what are like the category groupings you want to make sure you kind of cover with those plugs?
Well, it's gonna be a smorgasbord of top water, like pencil poppers and spooks, metal lip swimmers for sure. And it's going to depend on conditions also, Toby. If it's, if it's rough water or calm water, I could vary my bag a little bit. But then I'm going to want to have soft plastics, shads, different, colors matter to me. And the color is usually white or white and yellow. I'm not a big fan of matching the hatch with colors that are like very fishy looking, like a bunker shad versus a white shad. I'm going to do better with the white shad. It just stands out in the water better, and they single it out. So needlefish, because you never know, you could have sand eels around, and yet needlefish could catch when they're not sand eels around, because there's other bait that could imitate. SP minnow styles, hydro minnows, the new Loki swimmers. I could go on and on and on. And my bag will have almost all of those in there. Rubber eels. I know you guys use a lot of sluggos, but I'll use stuff that's similar, like the hoagie versions and everything.
Yeah.
But I'll mix it up. And you know what? A lot of times people are throwing the same lure cast after cast. And then if I'm doing that, all of a sudden I switch to one lure different. My first cast I'm on. And you wonder why. And you're thrown in the same location. So sometimes that triggers a bite. Yeah. But it's not an exact science, unfortunately.
Yeah. It gives me anxiety. You tell me all those different plugs and, considerations going in. I'm like, because like Jerry said, a lot of guys have gone to fewer plugs, smaller bag. I've go very far in that direction, and like to even think about having to pack a 6 or an 8 tube or something to that effect. Even a 4 tube would drive me crazy trying to plan that thing out to go walk the beach. So I give you credit there.
There was days last year that I was up in Monmouth County, and I'm walking now, so I got a big bag and everything, and I'm catching fish, and somebody will be near me, a friend that I know, whatever. Hey, you have an extra one of those? I go, yeah, I got a duplicate in there. It's like Noah's Ark.
That's funny. See, that's much closer to what I do. People have seen my plug bag. Yeah. I jam my plug bags, especially in the fall, and especially if I'm walking or covering a lot of ground. I do the same thing. Another question related to this that I just thought of is, so you've got this big plug bag that your Noah's Ark bag, which I love. That's what we're gonna call it from now on. You got your Noah's Ark bag. Are you repacking it a lot, or are you sort of like, I got everything I need in this bag? Or are you like, nope, tonight I'm going to do this, and then you get home and it's like, oh, the conditions are a little bit different. Now I have to repack it with more stuff? How do you approach that?
No, I repack it for sure. Yeah. I'm not, just depending on conditions, and then if there's a bite on a certain lure that's been hot, I'll have multiple ones. Like if it's a pencil popper bite, I'm not going to have one pencil popper. I'm going to have, maybe a 3 ounce, a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, couple variations in color maybe. Same with the metal lips and shads. No, you have to change it up a little bit. If there's a good sand eel bite, I'm going to have maybe Avas in there, which I hate throwing, but they're productive. I always tease people, it's like one step up from fishing a clam.
Yeah, that's funny. That's how we feel too.
Yeah, in New England, back in the 80s, there Tim Coleman called the diamond jig, which is essentially what it is, the metal clam. That's what it was when he did cod articles. So yeah, I get that.
And then, to answer your question earlier with, people, what advice you would give, I'll see so many people walking down on the beach with a green tail Ava, because they're successful with it in the fall a lot of times, but they'll use it all season long. They're with that lure, and I don't know. It's just because past falls they did good with them, and they're thinking this is their go-to. It's that magic lure, but they're better off fishing a clam.
Probably more exciting.
Yeah. So since we've actually skipped towards a topic that we were going to cover closer to the end, but this is great. You've mentioned
you can recap that.
Yeah. You've mentioned that you like white, for example, whites and yellows. Are there any other standout colors where you're like, well, I mostly do most of my damage in whites and yellows, but there's this couple of colors that I'm like, I really want to have in my bag.
That's a toughie because I'm usually very successful just with white. Like it's almost every lure that I have, if it's my go-to, it's going to be that white one. Another color though, it has some pink in it. Pink, especially soft baits. I do well with the Hoagie pink, originals. For some reason that shows up good. It could, imitate maybe, I don't know, a squid or something possibly. But that color, yellow is somewhat important. Chartreuse is somewhat important. But, some of these really funky psychedelic lures, they'll catch. But if I'm next to somebody and I'm throwing white and they're throwing that, I think I'm going to outfish them.
Yeah. Is there a color? Jerry and I have actually talked about having a whole separate episode, he and I, going off on this direction. Is there a color you like despise? Like you would not, unless there was, even if it was the bite and everybody was on this color, like you would still try to avoid it. Is there just a color you're like, that's just not for me in the surf? Do you have anything like that?
I've seen guys throwing black metal lip swimmers during the daytime and not scoring. So I probably would use that as an example, possibly. I don't know. You never know, because sometimes not all color is going to catch a fish. So I can't say that that's going to happen all the time. But to be consistent, I want to be consistent. And I think by using that knowledge that I have of using that type of color and everything, it works. And just like with bucktails, I see guys throwing all different color bucktails, and I want that white one with that white with red thread around it. A curly worm or a piece of pork rind or a straight worm. It outfishes the other colors, and yet guys, they make the Wonder Bread bucktail. I mean, really?
Yeah, there's crazy colors on the
really
bucktails.
Make you catch more fish? I don't think so.
I mean, I think this is not a question actually maybe that any of us even want to try to answer right this second, but I would make the argument that the bucktail is the thing where the color matters the least of anything I could think of. That white is right all the time. 99.999999999%. And I can't think of any lure that has that same color combo.
Yeah.
Well,
probably comments going on YouTube now about the wine red ones.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Shelly?
I was just going to say, I also use pure tin bucktail. So that's going to be a metal color, and that produces real well.
Yeah.
But, I think it just looks more bait fishy, with that glitter, that flash to it a little bit. So they were popular. We used to call them doodle bugs, and we would fish them in the rivers mainly. But out in the open surf, I use them also. But white, primarily white.
Yeah. With those tin bucktails, do you use those just for the flash, or is there other advantages to them?
Tin is lighter than lead, so you could get a bigger profile with less weight. And there's a lot of times if I'm fishing the rip currents, even on open beaches, naturally rips and just the moving current off of a sandbar, the tin squid or tin, I should say, bucktail is going to be a little bit lighter, and it's going to track and not dig in as much, and it's going to track really well. So some of the local Sharpies still use them, and I think there's a few manufacturers that still offer them.
Yeah, talk about something
that I was going to ask.
Yeah, talk about something that doesn't get used very often. Yeah, that's cool. Speaking of rips and sandbars, you've talked a lot about the fact that being mobile is important to you, but when you hit the beach and you walk down, what's your favorite piece of structure? Like if you had to set up a scenario, forget about for a second, what kind of bait, but just a general piece of structure. What are you excited for? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for usually sandbars. I like sandbars. So generally, if I could find two sandbars with a cut in the middle of it, depending on tide, I want that avenue where that bait could get through. So that cut in the middle of that two sandbars, it can get through there. If it's a low tide, I might wait till a higher part of the tide where stuff will drift off the sandbar, because fish are going to be in those pools ambushing the stuff that's going to slide off of the sandbar. So that's one piece of structure. Another one would be points. there's like 9 miles of beach on Island Beach. So there's areas that jut out, and I'm going to fish those because it's shallow in the front of it, but to the sides of it, you usually have a deep pool, and a bait fish could get trapped in those. And I'll fish, on both sides of the point. So there are two of the common ones. And then a pocket near a jetty. We have one jetty down in Island Beach. It's Barnegat Inlet's North Jetty, and the bait gets trapped in the pocket. So you're fishing from the sand, and the bait fish will get trapped at the base of the jetty. So that's another spot that could be, you could use that up and down the coast. Wherever there's a jetty, you can have a south pocket and a north pocket.
Mm-hmm. So when you're casting at a sandbar, are you casting over the top of it, casting onto it, and casting what I call under it? Like, how do you approach that? Are you casting right onto it all the time? I mean, I know you were talking about stuff getting washed off, but I've seen and heard a lot of different approaches to that and how they handle that. So how do you handle that?
Well, it would depend on where the sandbar is, Jerry.
Okay.
If it's way out, a lot of times we'll have to walk a cut at low tide to get on top of the bar and then fish the outer bar, technically. But if it's closer, I'll cast beyond it and then drift over it. I'll cast to the sides of it, in the middle of it, and I'm going to be prospecting. And generally, that's a good lure to use then is like a needlefish or a mambo minnow or an SP minnow, hydro minnows, stuff like that. If you feel like there's sand eels and small bait fish around. But if there's bigger bait, naturally, I'm going to use, my go-tos like a metal lip swimmer or pencil poppers and spooks, stuff like that. So basically, that's how I would approach a sandbar like that.
Yeah.
If the sandbar is out far enough so you're casting to it and you're up on the dry, let's say the dry sand side, you're casting to that sandbar, do you have much preference, or you found much difference if like water depth on top of it, meaning if it's just kind of rolling over and it's there, is that as good, better, not as good as when it's shallower and kind of you get that white water or the rolling waves crashing into it? Do you encounter much difference there?
You got to get beyond it, though, from what you're saying. If it's really shallow and then to get to the end of the sandbar, it depends on how far it's off of our, the base of the sand. So if I can't get over it, I'm probably going to move, to be honest with you, unless there's fish inside it for some reason. But I definitely want to try to cast beyond it if you can. And if I can't, then I'm going to try to find a location where it's different structure, possibly.
That's great. That's exactly what I was wondering. When it comes to the points, you mentioned that on either side of the point, it could be maybe deeper on one side, maybe not so deep on the other, whatever. Do you ever fish right over on top of the point? And what does that usually look like? What are you looking for there?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend on the tide, naturally. A higher part of the tide, you can fish right in the middle of it. If it's dead low, chances are you're going to fish the sides of it, or try to cast beyond it if you can, or wade out on it to a short distance and cast beyond it. But tide would be an important factor on it, and how the current's moving.
So speaking of the way the tide's moving, when it comes to these points, I love points and I'm obsessed with them. And I've literally done an entire hour and a half on just fishing points. So I love talking about it. Are you focusing on the up tide or the down current? Let's use the right word. Up current side or down current side? You know what I mean? So if the current's moving right to left, are you focusing on the right side of the point or the left side of the point?
Right to left. I would, if it's right to left, I would fish the left side.
Okay.
Cast it on top of it and letting it drift across, like I would do a river or an inlet. And I like outgoing tide too. I think that the currents are going to be better on the outgoing. It'll have different movement. I like whitewater too. I'm a big fan of whitewater.
Okay, so for your general area, you like the ebb. You like the dropping tide. You think that's
Generally
better?
speaking, I like outgoing. But again, it's not an exact science. And sometimes, we'll go changing the tide, the incoming, if the bait shows up for some reason. But it seems like it happens more on outgoing, from a flood tide down. That 6-hour period usually is when things, materialize and right to dead low tide. Some of the best fishing's right at that time frame. And it could be bright sun. You never know.
Do you think that like a preference, let's say, to the dropping tide, you think it has something to do with perhaps like a level of urgency in that things are getting pulled out, and if it's the bait fish, they know that eventually they're going to be pushed out of there so the striped bass are able to feed on it? Do you think is there some other factor that you think is in play?
No, I think what you said is correct. Yeah, I mean that the tide like swirling around, moving out. The bait, it depends. A lot of stuff could be on the bottom. It could be sandbugs and calico crabs we have, and they're scavengers at times. So if there's a lack of bait, they could be in there roaming around looking for that. And on an outgoing tide, when I used to do a lot of calico crab fishing, that was the prime time. Incoming, you catch them occasionally. Outgoing, you did way better. Mm-hmm. So same thing with with artificials, I would say for sure.
Yeah, interesting. So I mean, we've been talking a lot about nighttime. Or no, we haven't been talking about nighttime at all. We're talking a lot about daytime. Excuse me. Well, I'm tired.
I'm in bed at 7 o'clock. Jerry, I'm in bed at 7 o'clock.
Yeah. Okay. I've been fishing really hard. I'm kind of a mess. When it comes to the night, though, because I know you've done a lot of night fishing too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When it comes to the night, does the structure you prefer change at all, or do you still like that same types of structure, and do you still approach it the same?
Oh, I would the same way. Yeah, absolutely. I try to make, when I was doing more night fishing, we'll know where the sandbars are, where the cuts are, where, different holes and stuff. Absolutely. It's the same nighttime, daytime. It wouldn't matter as far as the structure goes. I would definitely look for that structure and not just, and prospect also, but your approach could be different. Usually you're working different lures in the dark, because you're not really seeing the bait unless it's physically there.
Yeah. Is there a piece of structure that you hear people talk about or they look for that you're like, I don't really care for that? Is there anything like that? You might not have a good example, but
not really. The only thing, if it's something that's really flat with no current, no movement, I mean, I wouldn't want to, fish there technically, but not really. I'm not hearing that, where people say, oh, you got to go over there. And I'll go, no, I'm not going there. That's not working.
So when it comes, we're going to stop saying piece of structure. I'm just going to say sandbar. When you're fishing the sandbar, let's say, do you walk along it and like work along it? Or do you sort of like, a part of the best piece of the sandbar, fish that. If there's no fish, move. Or do you sort of pick along it? Do you see what I'm saying?
To answer that, it would be both ways, technically, at times. It depends on my success. If I'm right in the middle of it and on B sides, let's say, and I'm catching fish, I'm going to not really jump around a lot. But I'll move if things aren't happening to the left and the right of it, 50 yards up, 50 yards down. If nothing's happened, if I'm mobile, I'll get back in my truck and drive along. But if I'm up in Monmouth County, where I'm definitely walking, I'll walk out of the beach from where I am and go to another location, and try to find them.
So you're not so much picking
along. I don't
want
to beat a dead horse.
Yeah, okay. You're not picking along like every single inch of it. You're sort of sampling it in bigger strokes and then making a big move.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. If it's like dead, you're not just keep working, something's going to. You're eventually, at some point, you're going to make that call to make the move away.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I'm going to ask you a really weird question, kind of random, and then I'll explain. Do you ever find any kind of vegetation or like algae or anything like that on the sand? And if you do, does it ever produce anything for you? And I'll explain why, if this is a weird question.
Not really. Our island, we have sand dunes and there's vegetation, but it's behind us. There's nothing really. If I'm not walking on a sandbar and there's not eelgrass there, or we might have cabbage that we don't want there. That's vegetation to a degree, but it's floating around, and you got eelgrass at times floating around, but that not natural vegetation. No, we don't have that.
Yeah, I just had to ask because it's something that we see on the Cape, and it can often mean, it often is associated with an area with good amount of current because it digs out the sand and then there's rocks. And then when that stays there for months, that piece of structure, we can get some growth that actually grows on it. And you end up with this little piece of, it's like a vegetation island almost in these troughs. And it can make a big difference sometimes. I've had a couple of spots over the years when that happened that were really good. And I thought maybe it was more of a Cape thing because our tides are a lot bigger, I thought. But I was just curious if you'd have run into it. So you answered my question perfectly. I was just curious. So switching gears from the structure a little bit, let's talk about conditions. because we talked a little bit of whitewater, but we've talked a fair bit, and I had you on surf scenarios for like 4 hours, but I don't think I've ever asked you this. If you had to pick a wind for the sand for your fishing, what would you want?
And we're talking a fall, correct?
Yeah. We're focusing on fall, sure.
Okay. West winds, northwest and west, because that's going to drive the bait fish tighter to the beach, especially adult bunker. Peanuts generally will ride close to the shoreline, but in rough water, they may stay out further and not in tight. They don't want to be in that rough water because they're going to get ambushed. But west winds, northeast is an important wind for sure. I usually like that when we have a series of west winds and the bait's close, and the first day of a northeaster, the bait's going to be still there, hopefully, and the stripers are going to be in there and taking advantage of that white water and that rough conditions. Southeast is kind of okay. The worst would be a south wind for us. We get an upwelling effect, and what happens, the water gets super duper cold real quick, and it could drop. Let's say it's 65 degrees. It could be 50 something degrees the next day and kill a bite. That fast drop in temperature. So south usually, we always call it the kiss of death down by us. But hopefully, we're going to get a lot of northwest winds and no storms. And if we get northeasters, not super duper severe, but they would be the wind conditions that I'm looking forward to.
Okay. And your shoreline, generally speaking, is north-south. So like that west wind is essentially at your back pushing out, you're saying, right. Just for perspective. Yep. Yeah. And then, northeast would be, kind of in your face. Due east would be right in your face. So how does that south wind pull the cold water in? Like, what is it that's do you know what brings that?
It's a weird, I don't understand it 100%, but it's upwelling, they say. It's taking cold water from the bottom and bringing it to the surface, and it comes into the shoreline. It's just the way it is. Now, you could have northeast and you get warm water. I guess it's from the continental shelf or the Gulf Stream or whatever, Yeah. So we're getting that water from that zone. But the upwelling, it gets that bottom water to the surface and it comes to us and drops the temperature. And it gets crazy. I've been on a beach in August and July, and you would need a sweatshirt, and the water would be like 60 something degrees, and you would come home and it'd be 99 degrees at your house. And people would go, "How was the beach today?" I go, "You froze. You needed a sweatshirt because of the south wind. It just got that air and that water temperature down so bad."
Yeah. And then now I know we're talking fall, but like in the summer when that would happen, would that assist the bite at all? Just because cooling?
That's a good point, Toby. Back in the 70s and 80s, I used to do a lot of rig deal fishing. Every night we would go, and it was in the jetty country, which we had all the jetties up in Spring Lake, Belmar, and Long Branch, Deal. If you had a southeaster or a south wind, the water got cold, the stripers came in to feed. Yep, 100%. They like that, let's say 64, 62 degree water from that maybe 70 degree or 69 degree change. So yeah, it was important, that wind, but only then, not now. We don't want that.
Falls the kiss of death with it.
Yeah,
100%.
I know. 100%. Steve Glond actually wrote about this. He's a North Shore, Massachusetts angler, which he was on here, obviously. Mm-hmm. He wrote about upwelling in the SJ edition. I can't remember. Crap. I thought maybe I remember, but I can't remember. I've been fishing too hard. My brain is broken. But he wrote about how in the summertime it can be really good for them because their water can start to get warm, but they get really cold upwelling, so their fishing can stay really strong through the very hottest weather. So the same kind of concept. But I can see that being a kiss of death in the fall for sure, when you're looking for those sort of constant, consistent, state.
Yeah, you don't want a big drop in temperature too soon. It could get a little colder, but if it's like let's say 60 and then it goes to 58 or 57, but you don't want it to be, let's say 58 and go down to 50 in one day. That's when the problems start, because they could tolerate almost 45 degree temperature at times. We'll catch them.
Yeah. The fish don't dislike that drastic weather temperature change any more than we do.
Yeah.
100%,
right.
100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You actually mentioned this earlier, and I wrote it down because I wanted to come back to it. bluebird skies. So because you're doing a lot of daytime fishing in the fall on the sand beaches where you're fishing, does that affect what you do any differently? Do you sort of approach like a cloudy day any differently than a bright sunny day? Does it affect where you fish, what you're throwing, etc.? Does it change it at all?
I'd rather have cloudy days, and rough, and like rainy days are good. For a blue jay day, I've had tremendous success on those days also. You never know. Again, in the fall, it's where that bait is. And if you find that bait, it could be bright sun, 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And then it could be, just before dark, or it could be at first light. So,
but does your approach change at all? Like you're like, oh, it's a bluebird day, I'm going to do this, versus, oh, it's raining today, I'm going to do this. Or is it sort of, no, it's more dependent? Go ahead.
I'll be more optimistic on a day that's not generally. But you could get faked out. That's the difference. You could have that northeast wind and the water's white water, and it's clean color, that opaque green, and it looks bassy, and there's nothing there. And then you go there and it's like super flat, and the bait happens to be there and the fish show up. So,
but your plug's choices don't change based on if it's raining versus if it's bright sun.
No, not really. No. The only time it would change if it's rougher conditions or severe winds or something possibly. But no, my plug choice would also probably stay pretty consistent.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, ultimately, that sounds like you're not going to like wake up one day, see the weather, and say, no, this isn't worth it, and because you've run into it you've had the positive success on those calm bluebird days. Obviously, prefer the weather, but you're still just going. It's the fall.
Yeah. This is the way it is. Doing it a long time.
So, is there a wild card? We talked a lot about plugs, which is great. Is there a wild card plug that you sometimes carry? Maybe you don't always carry it, but that you pull out when things aren't really working, or you're like, I'm throwing the Hail Mary. This is the thing I brought for this situation. Do you have something like that?
Miracle plug, you said?
Yeah,
the beginning?
Or like a wild card, card.
Yeah, it could be something that your Hail Mary plug, things are not going well. I'm going to throw this because nothing else is working for me. Do you have a plug like that you kind of carry for those purposes, that situation?
I would say a spook. Now, I mean, it's been super popular for me and other anglers the last number of years. The reason, metal lip would be probably my first choice normally. And I was going to say, my daughter keeps interrupting this podcast, unfortunately. But the spook would be my go-to now, for sure. It's going to throw further than a metal lip swimmer. It's got that tantalizing movement. I have tremendous success when other things aren't working. I mean, guys around will be throwing everything under the sun, and then I'll put one of them on, and it just got that movement on top that just entices a strike for some reason. It's just, I don't want to say pisses them off, but it does.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific spook? I mean, everybody always, defaults to the dock, which is fine. But is that what you would be throwing?
Well, I started with that naturally. The first time I don't figure probably about 10 years ago when I first got introduced to them. Our local guys were using them, and it was Muskie Mania made it, and I ordered them online and started using them. But now a lot of the custom guys, Z Shore is one of our local guys, makes a good one. But this year I'm going to try the new one from Uzuri. Came out with one that looks really interesting. It's I think it's 3 ounces, and they say it's going to cast better than the dock and trap pretty good, because the dock doesn't cast that great. And I have trouble at times with the dock going subsurface on me. There's times I'll get it right on top, and then there's times when all of a sudden it's just under the water. And I do a side to side motion with my rod. I don't work it like a pencil popper vertical. I'm doing a side movement when I'm working my spooks.
So do you actually hold the rod down to the side versus the traditional between legs, rod tip up? Okay.
Yeah, and that makes it walk and dance a lot better. I have way more success doing it with that. And and color again, I like white and yellow. They're a magic lure. And
Yeah.
more and more people are finding out, and a lot of the companies are,
Making
putting
their versions. Yeah.
Yeah.
making them because of the success rate.
Yeah.
For sure.
Now, you've mentioned metal lips a lot, and I think that puts you into more of a minority because they're definitely not as popular during the day, at least certainly up here. But my assumption is also down there, they're not quite as popular as they are like nighttime Boulder Field sort of deal. Do you vary the size of your metal lips? Like, so are you carrying like a generally like, I like this size, or you're like, no, I've got 10 of them and they run from 3/4 to 6 ounces. You know, what do you look for?
Oh, I vary them for sure. I'll use the peanut size, and I'll go up to 4 to 5 ounce bigger ones. With big lips on them, so they track. I want them right on the surface. I don't want them subsurface. I fish a single belly hook on them. I don't have multiple hooks. The ones that I have that have the double hooks, I try not to use them anymore. So most of the new ones that I fish with, and I'll put a flag on the back, helps the mortality rate. And you could deal with it. If I'm wading, I don't have that extra treble hanging. But I want different sizes for sure. And again, the different sizes up to 4 ounces generally. And I'll use them in all kinds of conditions, even rough surf conditions. I'll time my cast, and they work great in white water. And if the big baits around, they're phenomenal.
Yeah.
Any particular builders you like? We can give some shout outs because I'm really curious for their, like, what are your few favorites of yours?
You got Salty Sea. I don't know if you know that name.
I don't know that name.
No.
Yeah, he's kind of more localized now. I think he lives in North Jersey, but he makes a beautiful metal lip swimmer. We used to use the one they would call Sunset. I don't know if you heard that name. And Lefties, which are, he passed away naturally. But you got Derek from, Lights Out. He makes some good metal lip swimmers. There's a lot of, if you go to these local flea markets, and we just had one in our area, there were probably 25 guys that make metal lip swimmers, and they're all quality. Another one is Salty Degenerate. And then I think when we did our first podcast, not podcast, when we did the seminar series, you got them from Hooker.
Hooker. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was your favorite. You said.
Big fan of Hooker. Those are subsurface though. Those ones tend to dive. You can keep them on the surface, but they'll dive down. I really like Hooker. Hooker.
I want them right on top. I mean, we spoke about this, I think, in the past, and I want wake on the top. It looks like it's an injured bait fish, and they don't get a real good look at it. If it's subsurface, they may get a better look at it and refuse it possibly. But up there, they figure I got a chance at it, swat it, and hope you're going to fight them.
Do you have a preference to the build style, like the Jersey style, the fully sealed versus your through wire with the swivels? The water can essentially run through. Do you have any sort of preference, or you're not concerned as much about that? You're not thinking that side so much as long as the plug works, that's far more important.
Good question. I use both, though, to be honest. I mean, the sealed ones are going to hold up, where they're not going to get waterlogged. But the swivel versions, they're not going to get leverage on you. So that could be a factor. But I've caught big fish on both, to be honest. But I've had a couple of cases where they were sealed and they would twist that wire hanger. And I've had a couple where it would break if the wire wasn't really strong enough. But a lot of the guys that are using the seal ones are using a heavier duty wire today. A lot of my friends that make custom ones. And again, the barrel swivels, fine. On these glide baits, they're all using the barrel swivels on these $100 glide baits. Have you seen them yet? The strides.
Yeah. Yep. Sure have.
Uh-huh. Oh,
I just bought a stride Sunday, $100. That's going to be my miracle lure this year, Jerry.
It better be.
It better be.
Miracle that you don't lose it.
Yeah.
My son, we walked in the house and my son goes to my wife. He goes, "Look what Dad bought for $100." And she looked at me like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, if I buy a plug for $100, it's going on my wall in the collection, and I don't buy modern ones for the collection, so it's got to be vintage.
Yeah. That's funny. This actually gets to a point I wanted to just ask you. If someone is on a budget and they can't go to these shows and spend the moolah on these customs, is a Gibbs Danny okay? Would that work?
Absolutely. I caught, I don't want to say thousands of bass on Danny's, but I did. That was a go-to right after Creek Chub, the Danny came out, and we all used them. And then you remember Bob Hahn was another one that was a popular, affordable lure. But Gibbs, and Danny Lupo, naturally, when they were Danny's, still to this day, and they're affordable. Yeah. And a lot of these flea markets, you could pick them up from, guys that have used tackle, and they'll have Danny's there for $5, $6, $7.
Yep.
And if you put a coat of paint on them, if you want to, just make them white. They always swam well, and they got the barrel swivels, so they weren't a seal plug, but they caught. Absolutely. If you're on a budget, you don't have to spend that kind of money for sure.
That was what I was wondering, because that you can get them anywhere. They're like Gibbs Danny's like in almost every shop.
Readily available.
Yeah.
I probably have a couple of hundred I could lend you.
That's funny.
We recently did the 4 plug talk where Jerry and I said, the 4 plugs we had to have for the sand, or the 4 for the rocky shoreline. If there was just one plug for you on the sand beach in the fall, let's just say you are running out the door and you only have time to grab your rod and it's got one plug on it, and you're going to the beach that you got the most confidence in, what would that be? Just one.
Tough question.
Wow. That's not normally how I operate.
Yeah, well, I know it goes totally against your being prepared for everything. So
let's say I forgot my plug bag and I have.
You hope there was the preferred plug that was on the rod already. Yeah.
I would probably do a crankbait like a SP minnow or a hydro minnow or a Hoagie OG swimmer for sure, because that can imitate a variety of different bait fish. So I think that would be something that I would say I would be confident with. But there's so many. I mean, I don't want to have something, I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question.
That's a really hard question. Don't ask me that, Toby. I'll refuse to answer.
Just comparing it with, it was hard enough for us to come up with a 4.
Yes.
But, and then I'm thinking, Shell likes a lot of plugs. Let's really see what he can do. So I like that. No, that's a good one, because it'll also help too. Building your plug bag out. The listeners that want to start, there's a good spot. Start your plug bag you're building for the surf in the sand in the fall. Start with that one and then go, building it out from there with all these other options.
Yeah. Yeah, you picked up a lot. Well, Toby, I've asked all my questions I would ask. Do you have anything you'd like to end with, or?
No, that doozy was the last one I wrote down and wanted to throw in and put Shell on the spot. You handled it well.
That was a curveball.
Yeah. That was a great question. Great question. Well, Shelly, thank you so much for coming on again. Like Toby said, you've been one of our number one requested to have back on. Definitely. And we really appreciate you sharing all your decades of knowledge. And before I kick it over to Toby, I just want to say I hope you do have a great fall, and I hope that it is a banner, because it's been tough out there, like you said, and hopefully you get what you've been working so hard for. So hopefully it's a good fall for you.
Yeah, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, that's what we got. It's there's still time. There's time to make up for the rest of the season, and there have been fish around. They are out there. So hopefully you encounter them. And again, we appreciate you coming on today. This was a lot of fun, and sorry to throw that hard one at the end, but you handled it well, like I said. So thanks for that, and thanks for taking it in stride.
And thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure for sure.
And actually, before we go, Shelly, what's your furniture store? People want to check it out.
I own a Dinette World in Bricktown, New Jersey. Doing it 55 years, and we have a cool coastal look. We do a lot of Amish furniture, a lot of some imported stuff. It's dining room furniture, bar stools, counter stools. I got a million cool signs. It's a neat store. It's fun. And I've been doing it a long time. My daughter's involved, my son's involved, and I'm semi-retired, I kind of think. But I'm going to work. I'm going to work after this.
Yeah, perfect. Surfcaster owned, so check that out. We want to make sure we got that in. So thank you so much for coming on again, Shelly. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure again. Thank you for having me.
This has been a weekly edition of the Surfcast Podcast. You can find out more about the podcast at surfcastpodcast.com, or definitely check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, the Surfcast Podcast.